Now the question is now, how do we go about this really serious problem, which is we are overusing the resources of our world, right? So it's particularly bad for industrialized countries, but the world average is about 1.4, 1.5. That means we need to be about 30% more efficient, really, to allow as many people to survive on this planet as we have today on the long run. And if you don't manage to get this down to 1.0 or below, it means that maybe billions of people would die. I mean, you need to be aware of this. This is about the survival of humans. And so the question is, what are the options that we have to survive? So some people would say, no, let's collect information about all the resources in the world and everyone, and basically tell everyone how much resources everyone can use. So basically, relation, portion the resources. Right, that's kind of the top-down approach, and I'd like to compare this top-down approach that we know from urban traffic light control in cities with different kinds of approaches. So in cities, there are different approaches that would have every intersection decide by itself what road to give how much green time and when. And so that can be easily done. Each intersection would do a strict travel time minimization as home economics would do it. I mean, if every intersection would strictly minimize travel time, this is what you would get. And then the third approach is doing the same thing, but if we have a long queue, we would first clear that queue before we go back to the minimization of travel time. So you would think, okay, this is other regarding, so that should be worse than this, which is a selfish optimization. And that should be worse than this, because this is kind of a centrally coordinated optimization approach. The problem, however, is that traffic light optimization is an NP-hard problem. You cannot solve it in real time, strictly. You need to make simplifications. And it turns out that the top-down regulation, as we increase the utilization of the intersection, would produce increasing queue lengths, and that curve looks pretty reasonable, right? So nothing to complain about. Now, if you go for the selfish optimization and the homo economicus, it turns out to be much better. So it produces much shorter queue lengths because it responds flexibly to the actual traffic situation in the neighborhood of that intersection. It doesn't respond to typical traffic flow situation as today's centralized traffic light control. However, if you get to this capacity utilization, then suddenly queue lengths explode. Traffic centers will say, see, this is why we exist, why you need us. Or we can say, here Adam Smith's invisible hand works, and here it fails. Right? But there is a third solution, that is the other regarding approach, which is also a distributed, decentralized approach, but it pays attention to your neighbors. And it turns out to be better all the way, because it responds flexibly to the local traffic situation, and it coordinates activities at neighboring intersections. That coordination spreads. So it turns out that we can make the invisible hand work by suitable information-based traffic assistance systems that respond to real-time measurements. Now, this creates really beautiful self-organized green waves, and it works not only in these square grids, but also in highly complex urban street networks, as we've shown this for Dresden. And they're really considerable gains as compared to the top-down optimization approaches of today. It's good for all modes of transport and also for the environment. There are gains of 30 to 40%. And so basically, the strategy is to go away from a system that tries to solve everything by regulation. This looks pretty over-regulated, right? Towards a system that would support the right kind of decisions. This is assisted decision making, and it can be pretty efficient, as you can see over here. This is not a modern intersection, obviously, right? But nobody has to wait over here for a very long time. And the question is, why is this happening? And again, it's system design. Now, this system is created to support optimization. So we have unidirectional flow over here, we have unidirectional flow in the back, and we have a small buffer over here that allows participants to adjust their speeds in such a way that we just cross the stream of traffic when there's a gap. Works wonderfully, right? So we just need to have designs that support self-optimization. Now, when it comes to addressing this sustainability challenge, there are many people in the world that are very pessimistic and who think it's impossible that in the post-carbon economy there could be 7 or 8 or 9 billion people on this planet. Billions of people would die, just nobody tells you this, right? I'm a bit more optimistic, actually. Of course, those people already take into account the development of fertility rates that have gone down quite considerably in the past decades, right? But this is not enough. On the other hand, in some countries actually, including Japan, reproduction rate is below what sustains the population. But there's another thing, as artificial intelligence spreads, actually people get less interested in interacting with real people, including having sex with them. And that means most likely birth rates would go down dramatically again, just by the very fact that we're living in a world full of technology that we spend more and more time with. Food. So what we need to do is eat less meat, because that saves a lot of water, and water is an issue. Also, we shouldn't throw away so much food. In fact, France is the first country to do this. About 30% of food is thrown away today. So, that can make a big difference. And also, we learn to recycle phosphorus, and that also gives us hope that it would actually be possible to feed the world in future. Of course, phosphorus is of course used for fertilizer, and we need that. Then there are other scarce resources besides phosphorus. The question is now, how do we deal with this? Well, generally, I recommend to measure externalities and give them a value or price, and then create a multi-dimensional exchange system that one could call finance 4.0. These kind of measurements can now be done with big data, and in particular with the Internet of Things. Before, that was difficult, and now we can do that, and we can create feedbacks. And this is actually why we're working on nervousness, because it should give people the opportunity to measure all these externalities. And that is an open, participatory platform supporting crowdsourcing. So I'd really like to invite everyone to participate in this effort. It's open source like Linux and Wikipedia and OpenStreetMap, and this time we're mapping the world around us together. That's the idea. We need to learn to reduce materials, to reuse them, to recycle them, so we really need to build a circular economy. And then it doesn't matter how much resources we have, we just have to recycle more and more quickly, right? And the sharing economy, in fact, is a new kind of recycling in a sense, right? It allows to use previously unused resources. And that can make a big difference too. So in fact, I believe that we can be much better. And also if we generally open up all patents and other resources that are not well used to the use of others for a fair price, and I think we can be really a lot more efficient. When it comes to energy, there's hope that actually solar energy in about 2 decades would be cheaper than nuclear energy even. And so very interesting developments in smart grids, also the coordination of production with consumption, but also considerably increase the efficiency of energy use. And when it comes to carbon dioxide, then basically what produces it is about 30% industry, 30% homes, heating and so on, and 30% traffic, right? So if we want to reduce this, and it's really clear we shouldn't fly as much, it means more local production, less holidays abroad. We shouldn't commute so much between different places. That means we should be living closer to work. And I think this is both possible. Because of new technologies, local production now becomes feasible, for example, with 3D printing, right? Completely new technology will reorganize the entire global economy, I believe. And a living and working, that would be a new kind of a sharing economy. If we just could reconfigure office space into living space and the other way around, then we don't need to commute, you know. So at the moment, we're just wasting resources. You know, we have an office and we have a home, and each of this is used 50% of the time. So it's inefficient. So we can change this if we just want to change it, or we have to change it, right? Now, when it comes to travel, then maybe that is the solution in the future. You know, it's a virtual reality. Discover the world from home. I mean, there are new solutions. That's what I'm trying to say here. We just need to engage in these new solutions. And we could do climate Olympics, basically competitions of scientists and engineers in cities for being more efficient, you know. And it could be fun to be more efficient, right? It's fun to be competitive, and that could be global competition. So if you really engage in this, I think you would make large progress towards much more efficient use and transport. And that's what we should do. And I think we also need to think about our innovation system, in fact. Because we need much more innovation within a very short time, because this is about human survival. I told you now, we really need to push the gas, and obviously the way innovation works today is not producing enough innovation in a short time period. You know. But on the other hand, as Sebastian Thun said, about only 1% of all things have been invented, right? So there are many inventions ahead of us, just we need to make them quickly. But people have the wrong idea about how innovation works. So, of course, politicians will say, why can't you invent another iPhone, right? That produced billions, of course. And the idea is, okay, so you sit down, you come up with a great idea, you produce it, you know, innovation done. But this is not how it works, in fact, right? Let's look back into the life of Steve Jobs. You know, this is how it started. A lot of those companies that are now the most valuable companies in the world have been created in garages by students that didn't finish their studies. So bottom up, and in fact, they started as losers in a sense. So Steve Jobs remembers, so we went to Atari and said, hey, we've got this amazing thing even built with some of your parts, and what do you think about funding us? Well, we'll give it to you. We just want to do it. Pay our salary, we'll come work for you. And they said, no. So then we went to Hewlett Packard and they said, hey, we don't need you, you haven't got through college yet. Pretty frustrating, right? But this is the kind of experience that innovators often make. Now then, later on, Steve Jobs created this wonderful thing called Macintosh, but it didn't sell very well. It was just a genius invention, but not a good product from the point of view of salesmen. And so he was kicked out of Apple, and he created a new company, Next Computer, also not successful. And later on, he came back to Apple and invented this wonderful Apple Newton, which was kind of the iPhone, but nobody cared. Until Apple put $1 billion into marketing, and that changed everything. So, in the end, coming up with a great innovation is, to some extent, out of control of the individual, right? And this is the discovery that people made many times. So, first, people deny a scientific discovery is true, and then they say it's not important, and in the end, when they realize it's important, somebody else says, I think first, right? So that's kind of the problem. We've seen that for electrical current, for telephone, for computers, for television, basically every great invention, people didn't believe in the beginning. So, innovators need to be able to suffer, and we shouldn't make them suffer harder than necessary, so we should support them. And the question is, how can this be done? Is our scientific system made to support innovators? And what we have today is more or less Bentham's panopticon, so everything we do is measured, right? Every publication, every citation, our proposals are evaluated, our classes are evaluated, everything is evaluated. When we have a new idea, it will immediately pop up in a sense, on some radar screen will be measured. But we fail to come up with all those innovations that we need to survive. How is this possible, right? So basically, we're good at increasing numbers of publications, good at increasing citations and H-index and numbers of students and exams and all this. So we do all the stuff that is expected from us and which is measured about what is really needed from us to come up with those huge innovations to save the world. This is not happening, and it's not happening because there are herding effects. We're kind of forced into this path of success. We need to succeed immediately and all the time. And as we've seen, innovations take time to succeed, right? So we cannot afford even to take the risk for big innovations. And that is what happens then. Big failure, science cannot answer the questions that real life is actually asking to us. So the previous European central banker, Jean-Claude Trichet, said, when the crisis came, the serious limitation of existing economic and financial models immediately became apparent. We felt abandoned by conventional tools. So science didn't have the answers, should have had, right? So we need to stop searching where the light is. We're spending too much time on finding out more details about what we know already. We really need to look into those things that we don't understand enough. And it takes freedom. We can clearly see those places that offer a lot of freedom are more innovative. And also, diversity is important to drive the innovation rate too. Okay, so to eventually come to an end, you've been patient with me. I do think that we can master the challenges of the future. Yeah? We can produce new jobs and new solutions with information knowledge production. Creative work will become much more important. Personalized products, personalized education, and we can all be entrepreneurs. Will be important to co-create much more than in the past. That means to collaborate. Network thinking will be much more important. And in fact, a new kind of economy a non-material kind of digital economy that we now have to create as jobs in the old economy are breaking away. And that requires to build an information, innovation, and production ecosystem which is open for collaboration. That requires interoperability, because then it can support combinatorial innovation. The fascinating thing about the digital economy is it's a non-zero-sum game. So if you want to have more, I don't have to take it away from somebody else. We can reproduce information as often as we like. We can use it in many different ways. Sharing information can increase its value. That's a completely new economy, new opportunities, really. Everyone could be prosperous if we just create the right kind of framework for this. And we can turn a digital desert where there are just a few IT giants in the world into something that we could call a digital rainforest, where there's enough, more than enough information, in fact, for everyone, opportunities for everyone. And the biggest trees are much bigger than actually those trees in the desert. That means it's not bad for big companies. They could also be much bigger. Everyone could be doing much better if we just do the right thing. And that requires, however, to change our financial system. Of course, at the moment we have a trickle-down economy. Just the problem is the money often doesn't arrive at the bottom, and people at the bottom cannot consume much. If they cannot consume much, that's bad for the economy and bad for companies and even bad for the rich people. And in fact, central banks have put a lot of money from the top into the system, trillions. That hasn't helped much. It hasn't boosted the economy. They tried everything. It doesn't work, you know. We need a new system if we want to survive. I remind you of this. And this is a bottom-up created money complementary to the money system that we have. So that stays, but we need to have something complementary to this. And in fact, this can now be created. In fact, Bitcoin, in a sense, has shown this, right? That you can create value from bits in bytes. And so that will be one of my efforts in the future, to get this Finance 4.0 system off the ground. And I hope for your and everyone else's support, because if we don't do that, we are really in big trouble, I think. So, summarizing, if we go on as before, we may end in disaster. Loss of democracy, freedom, mass employment, financial and economic collapse, resource shortages, serious climate change, global war could be happening. In fact, quite likely, I would say, unfortunately. And I don't think that super intelligence will be the solution, and certainly these kind of systems can be helpful to think about, analyze systems, but we need to change our socio-economic system, not dramatically, and not to the disadvantage of particular groups, actually to the advantage of everyone. So what I'm proposing is to engage into the creation of information ecosystems, into opening up unused resources for use of others, to increase transparency and interoperability, to create participatory opportunities, to support co-creation, collective intelligence, give scientists and young entrepreneurs more freedom and opportunities, to promote a circular and sharing economy, to measure externalities, to price them and trade them. So to get this circular economy and Finance 4.0, and to enable self-organization, coordination, and co-evolution of systems. So it's time to do that. We don't have much time, and it's really great that Japan is now such an excited community of computational social scientists that will push it forward so we can succeed with the challenges that we have ahead and master our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I was so excited with this talk. It was like a comprehensive view or enlightening and encouraging for us. So anyway, we have a short time to question time. Or comments, please.
I'm Yoshimi Sato of Topography. I'm a sociologist, so I'm quite interested in your new proposal for the design of the society and economy. However, I'm afraid you miss an important aspect of society, that is social inequality. For example, as you pointed out, well-educated workers can make a balance of work and life using turning their home into office so they can work at home. However, still, blue-collar workers working for automobile factory have to commute. So we may see the increasing inequality between people in terms of occupation or knowledge or education. So what do you think about that?
So regarding the automobile factories, I think there are less and less people actually working in them, and so it's probably much less commuting. But inequality, yeah, that's an issue that people worry about increasingly, and even those people who haven't worried about it in the past, like OECD, World Economic Forum, and even the rich. Because, yeah, apparently it's hampering even economic growth, right? And with this, basically, the entire system doesn't work any longer. Some people think we should address that in terms of redistributing resources, and of basic income, for example, and that might be a solution if we do that globally. That should be checked out. It should be checked out quickly and brought on the way quickly. If we don't find any better solutions, I do think, though, that it's not sure that this coordinated effort will happen early enough, and that's why I would certainly, in parallel, go also for this finance 4.0 approach, which is a completely different approach. It's kind of based on a market approach, but it's open and participatory. Everyone can create money in the system based on effort, and can also be entrepreneurial, right? So it fits much better, actually, the economic system that we have today. It just adds some little details, but it's kind of consistent with the way of thinking which is still dominant. So from that point of view, I think maybe it's more likely that this is a chance to succeed. Just, I'm not sure how much time it takes to create this finance 4.0 system. So I really need support for this by the international community and by countries all around the globe, because there is no time to lose.
So only one question, comments. We have to licensing.
Thank you, Professor. I felt very impressed. Maybe I could not catch up all, but I have a basic question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about competence in free market? I mean, basically, with a new computational system, a society can be more complex, as a computational system itself is a part of society.
Mm-hmm.
When we create a new one, or ones, the society grows more complex. And as there is competence in our free market, in the future, there can be many companies, new high-level computational systems that compete each other.
Mm-hmm.
From this point of view, how one system can predict the next step of society, which includes itself and many other similar new systems. Or I mean, how can economic instability be reduced without introducing some limitation to free market? Sorry.
Right.
Could you please elaborate on that, please?
A kind of competing views on this issue. So some people think if we just had one supercomputer that could overlook everything and basically command what everyone should do, then we would get rid of this problem. I don't think this will work, actually. We'll never have computer systems complex enough to do a good enough job in this, given the complexity of the world. Point two is, some people think if we just had less players decide what happens in the world, then chaos would disappear. That means the solution seems to be, from their point of view, just create a framework that allows companies to become monopolies, and then in the end you just have a few monopolies that control everything throughout the world, so nation states wouldn't be important, but just a few company heads. And I don't think this is going to serve the majority of people, and it would probably end up in terrible battles and war. That's what I expect. Number three is just the opposite approach. Go away from the attempt to exert power and control the world towards empowering people to take better decisions, make better contributions to this world. This is the reason why we built the NervousNet platform, actually, a participatory platform that gives new opportunities to everyone. And so we would reduce the too big to fail problems that creates big disruptions to the system. If you just have a few players, you have a terrible too big to fail problem. So create more opportunities for everyone, and in fact, this framework, I think, can now be created because we have new technology, the Internet of Things, and this new science, computational social science with a particular focus on complexity science, right? So this allows us to come up with solutions that would allow the world to coordinate itself through self-organization if we just have the right kind of tools. So that's why I was calling for interoperability, and that's why I was talking about assisted systems. So if we do this, then I believe we'll get into a situation as in my self-controlled traffic light control, where even though the activities of the different intersections were taken by each intersection separately, it created a well-coordinated and very efficient system. We need to learn how to do this, the self-organizing society.
Thank you. So you don't agree with introducing some new type of limitation to free market, but the new social system must be linked to new computational systems, right?
We need to have this new framework that takes into account externalities and allows us to create feedbacks on the measurement of real-time externalities, right? This is, I think, what is missing at the moment. At the moment, we have difficulties paying attention to the environment and to others and to the scarcity of resources because we don't have the information to respond to. This has to change, and this can be changed now. Since very short time, we do have the technology for this, and so we should engage in this.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks also. Thank you so much for special lecture presented by dear Henry.